Captain Jake Morrison walked onto the bridge of his ship, the Valiant. He looked around at the old controls and the worn metal walls. The ship was over 200 years old. Everything about it looked ancient compared to the modern vessels in space. But Jake loved this old girl. She had carried him through many battles and always brought him home safe. The Valiant was part of Earth's fleet, and today they were meeting with the Galactic Coalition. The Coalition was a group of alien races who worked together to keep peace in the galaxy. But now they were at war. The Krathax Empire had attacked and destroyed many peaceful worlds. The Coalition needed help, so they called for Earth to join the fight. Commander Lisa Hayes stood next to Jake. She was his second in command and had been with him for 5 years. Lisa looked at the main screen where images of the Coalition fleet appeared. The alien ships were beautiful. They had smooth chrome hulls that reflected the light of nearby stars. Energy shields glowed around them like bubbles made of rainbow colors. Everything about those ships looked new and powerful. Jake counted 12 human ships on his radar. All of them were old. The newest one was the Independence, and even that ship was over 150 years old. Admiral Paul Grant commanded the Independence. He was in charge of all human forces in this sector. The Coalition had 40 ships waiting in space. Each one looked like it came from the future. Their weapons glowed with power. Their engines left trails of blue light. Next to them, the human ships looked like they belonged in a museum. A message came through on the communication system. The voice belonged to a Velkari ambassador. The Velkari were one of the leading races in the Coalition. They had pale blue skin and spoke in musical tones. "Human vessels, we acknowledge your arrival," the ambassador said. But there was something in his voice that made Jake frown. It sounded like the ambassador was trying not to laugh. Another transmission came from a different Coalition ship. This one did not hide the mockery. "Are those really your warships? They look like scrap metal. Did you bring them from a junkyard?" Laughter echoed through the communication channels. Multiple alien voices joined in. Jake felt his jaw tighten. He looked at Lisa, who had her hands clenched into fists. Lieutenant Ben Cooper sat at the weapons station. He was a young officer, only 25 years old, but he knew the Valiant better than anyone. Ben had grown up hearing stories about these old ships. His grandfather had served on vessels just like this one. Now those same ships were being laughed at by aliens who thought they knew everything about war. "Captain, should I respond?" Lisa asked quietly. Jake shook his head. "Let them laugh. Words don't win battles." More messages came through. The Velkari ambassador spoke again, this time making no effort to hide his amusement. "Perhaps the humans would be better suited for supply runs. These vessels appear too fragile for combat operations. We cannot risk having museum pieces slow down our attack formations." Jake wanted to reply, but before he could, Admiral Grant's face appeared on a private channel. The Admiral was 60 years old with gray hair and deep lines on his face. Those lines came from 3 decades of service to Earth's fleet. "I know what you're thinking, Jake," the Admiral said. "You want to tell them off. Don't. Save your energy for the real fight." "Sir, they're treating us like a joke," Jake replied. "Let them," Admiral Grant said calmly. "The Krathax will be here soon. When the shooting starts, we'll show them what these old ships can do. Until then, maintain radio silence except for fleet coordination." The Admiral's image disappeared. Jake turned to his crew. Everyone on the bridge had heard the mocking transmissions. They all looked angry and frustrated. "Listen up," Jake said loudly. "I know you're upset. I am too. But getting angry won't help. These alien races have never fought alongside humans before. They don't know what we're capable of. They see old metal and assume we're weak. That's their mistake, not ours." "Captain's right," Lisa added. "The Valiant has been in service for 212 years. She's fought in 17 major battles and dozens of smaller ones. She's never been destroyed, never been captured. There's a reason Earth keeps these ships running." Ben Cooper nodded and turned back to his console. He ran his hands over the controls. The weapons systems on the Valiant were different from what the Coalition used. While alien ships fired energy beams and plasma bolts, human ships used something older, something that everyone else had stopped using centuries ago. Ensign Danny Price sat at the helm controls. He was even younger than Ben, fresh out of the academy. This was his first real mission. Danny had been excited when he got assigned to the Valiant. Then he saw how old the ship was. He wondered if he had made a mistake joining the fleet. Now, after hearing the aliens laugh, he felt determined to prove them wrong. "Sir, I'm detecting multiple hyperspace signatures," Danny called out. "Big ones. The Kruthax fleet is arriving." Jake stood up straight. "Battle stations. All hands to combat positions. Ben, bring weapons online, but keep them cold. Don't power up until I give the order." "Understood, sir." The main screen showed space starting to ripple. It looked like someone was dropping stones into a pond, creating waves that spread outward. Then the Kruthax ships appeared. They came through hyperspace in perfect formation, 50 warships, each one covered in weapons and armor. The Kruthax were not a peaceful race. They conquered other worlds and took what they wanted. Their ships were designed for one purpose: destruction. Even from a distance, Jake could see how dangerous they looked. Long and angular, covered in gun ports and missile tubes. The Coalition fleet moved forward immediately. Their ships formed up in attack formation. Energy shields powered up to full strength. Weapons charged and glowed brighter. The human ships stayed back. No one ordered them to attack. The Coalition had made it clear they did not expect much help from Earth's ancient vessels. Jake watched the tactical display. The distance between the two fleets closed rapidly. The Coalition opened fire first. Bright beams of energy shot across empty space. They hit the Kruthax ships and scattered against their shields like water hitting glass. The Kruthax returned fire. Their weapons were powerful, very powerful. The first volley from the Kruthax fleet struck 3 Coalition ships. Energy shields flickered and failed. One ship exploded in a ball of fire. Another spun out of control, atmosphere venting from huge holes in its hull. Lisa gasped. "They're tearing through the Coalition defenses like paper." "The Kruthax have been conquering worlds for years," Jake said grimly. "They know how to fight ships with energy shields. They've built their entire strategy around it." More Coalition ships took damage. The beautiful chrome hulls were scorched and torn. The rainbow shields failed one after another. The Kruthax advanced steadily, their formation never breaking. Admiral Grant's voice came through on the fleet channel. "All human V, the first rounds from the human fleet hit the Kruthax ships with terrible force. The tungsten projectiles moved so fast that they glowed red from friction with space dust. When they struck enemy vessels, the results were devastating. A Kruthax battleship took 3 direct hits. The rounds punched clean through the hull. They went in one side and came out the other, leaving massive holes. Air and debris exploded out into space. The battleship's lights flickered and died. It began to spin slowly, powerless and broken. "Direct hit!" Ben Cooper shouted. "Target destroyed!" Jake watched his tactical screen. The Kruthax shields had done nothing. Energy shields were designed to absorb and deflect energy weapons like lasers and plasma bolts. But solid metal projectiles just passed right through them. It was simple physics. The shields could not stop physical objects moving at such high speeds. "Reload and acquire new target," Jake ordered. "Keep firing." All across the human fleet, ancient railguns thundered. The Valiant fired again. So did the Endeavor, the Defiant, and the Independence. 12 old ships pouring solid metal death into an enemy that had no defense against it. The Kruthax fleet suddenly found itself in serious trouble. They had been winning against the Coalition forces. Their shields worked perfectly against energy weapons. Their tactics were built around that advantage. But now they faced something completely different, something they had never encountered before. Commander Lisa Hayes coordinated with the other human ships. She used the old military communication protocols that Earth had developed 2 centuries ago. Simple radio transmissions that could not be jammed easily, no fancy quantum entanglement systems that could be disrupted, just basic technology that always worked. Valiant to Endeavor, target the cruiser at bearing 270. We'll take the destroyer at 335, Lisa transmitted. Endeavor confirms, engaging cruiser, came the reply. Captain Greg Stevens commanded the Endeavor. His ship was even older than the Valiant, built during Earth's first major war in space. The Endeavor had thick armor plating that made it slower than modern ships, but that armor could take hits that would destroy newer vessels. Greg watched as his railguns fired. The targeting computer, old but reliable, put rounds exactly where they needed to go. A Krathax cruiser tried to evade, but it was not fast enough. 3 tungsten rounds slammed into its engine section. Secondary explosions ripped through the enemy ship. On board the Independence, Admiral Paul Grant stood in the command center watching the battle unfold. His flagship carried the biggest railguns in the fleet. Each round weighed 20 tons. When those projectiles hit, they did not just damage ships, they broke them apart completely. "Fire," Grant ordered calmly. The Independence shook as its massive guns fired. 2 enormous rounds crossed the distance in seconds. They struck a Krathax heavy cruiser amidships. The impact was so powerful that the entire ship folded in half. Metal screamed and tore. The cruiser broke into 2 pieces that drifted apart slowly. Lieutenant Sarah Blake worked at the tactical station. She was tracking all enemy movements and feeding targeting data to the other human ships. The old computers on the Independence might look primitive, but they had been upgraded and maintained carefully. They worked faster than many newer systems because they had no unnecessary features, just targeting, tracking, and firing solutions. "Admiral, the Krathax are trying to focus fire on us," Sarah reported. "They've identified human ships as the primary threat." "Good," Grant replied. "That means they're scared. All ships maintain evasive maneuvers. Make them work for every shot." The Krathax commander, whose name was Vexthor, could not believe what was happening. His fleet had conquered 12 star systems. They had destroyed hundreds of enemy vessels. They had never lost a major battle. Now, ancient human ships were tearing his forces apart with primitive weapons. "All ships, concentrate fire on the human vessels," Vexthor ordered. "Destroy them immediately!" The Krathax fleet turned their weapons toward the human ships. Plasma cannons fired. Energy beams lashed across space. Missiles launched in swarms. The old Earth vessels suddenly found themselves under heavy attack. The Valiant took a direct hit from a plasma cannon. The blast struck the portside armor. Metal glowed white-hot, but the hull held. The Valiant had been built during a time when ships relied on armor instead of shields. Her hull was 3 times thicker than modern vessels. What would destroy a coalition ship only scorched the Valiant's surface. "Damage report," Jake called out. "Port armor is damaged but holding," Lisa replied. "No hull breach. All systems operational." Ensign Danny Price worked the helm controls frantically. He threw the Valiant into a rolling turn that made the old ship groan and shake. But it worked. More enemy fire passed through empty space where the Valiant had been seconds before. "Nice flying, Danny," Jake said. "Keep us moving. Ben, keep shooting." "Yes, sir." The Defiant took heavier damage. Captain Monica Webb's frigate was hit by multiple Krathax missiles. Explosions rippled along the hull. Armor plates were torn away. Internal systems failed. Warning lights flashed all over the bridge. But the Defiant kept fighting. Her railguns never stopped firing. Even with fires burning inside her corridors and half her crew working in emergency suits, the old frigate poured round after round into enemy ships. "We're still flying," Monica said grimly. That's all that matters. Keep shooting until we can't anymore. Lieutenant Ron Palmer, the chief engineer on the Defiant, worked frantically to keep the ship running. He bypassed damaged systems and rerouted power through backup lines. The Defiant had been built with massive redundancy. Every major system had 2 or 3 backups. You could destroy half the ship, and the other half would keep working. "Captain, I've got main power restored," Ron reported, "and the starboard railguns are back online." "Good man, Ron. Send damage control teams to the worst areas. We're not done yet." The Coalition fleet watched in amazement as the old human ships took punishment that would have destroyed any modern vessel. The thick armor, the redundant systems, the simple but tough construction, all proved their worth. More importantly, the human ships kept hitting the Krathax with devastating accuracy. The Velkari ambassador, who had mocked the human fleet earlier, now spoke with a completely different tone. "Human ships, your assistance is remarkable. We had no idea your weapons would be so effective. Please advise us on how we can support your attack." Admiral Grant smiled slightly. "Use your energy weapons to strip their shields. When the shields go down, we'll punch through their hulls. Coordinate your fire with our targeting data." "Understood, Admiral. The Coalition fleet will follow your lead." The battle became a coordinated effort. Coalition ships would bombard a Krathax vessel with energy weapons until its shields collapsed. Then human railguns would deliver killing blows. The Krathax fleet, caught between 2 different fighting styles, began to fall apart. Ben Cooper was sweating now. His console showed they had used 70% of their ammunition. Railguns needed physical projectiles, and those could run out. But he kept firing carefully, making every shot count. "Captain, ammunition is getting low," Ben reported. "Then make your shots count double," Jake replied. "Target their command ships. We break their leadership, we break their fleet." The Valiant's next salvo targeted a Krathax command cruiser. 2 rounds struck the bridge section. The third hit the communication array. The cruiser went silent, unable to coordinate with the rest of the fleet. Across the battlefield, similar attacks were taking place. The human ships, working with Coalition forces, systematically destroyed Krathax command and control. Admiral Grant had studied the enemy carefully. He knew that the Krathax relied on centralized command. Take out their leaders, and the rest would panic. It was working. Krathax ships began to break formation. Some tried to flee. Others fired wildly in all directions. The organized fleet that had arrived confident of victory was now in chaos. Captain Greg Stevens of the Endeavor led a group of 4 human ships in a flanking attack. They caught 6 Krathax destroyers trying to regroup. The old Earth vessels moved in perfect coordination. Their railguns. The aftermath of battle was always the hardest part. Captain Jake Morrison walked through the corridors of the Valiant, inspecting damage and checking on his crew. The old ship had taken hits, but she was still flying. Repair teams worked everywhere, welding torn metal and replacing damaged systems. "How bad is it?" Jake asked his chief engineer, a tough woman named Kate Sullivan. Kate wiped grease from her hands. "Bad enough. We lost 3 power conduits, the port armor needs complete replacement, and about half our secondary systems are offline. But she'll fly, Captain. Give me 48 hours and I'll have her combat ready again." "You've got 24, Jake replied. "The Krathax will be back and we need to be ready." Kate nodded and went back to work. Jake continued his tour. He stopped by the medical bay where Dr. Henry Martinez was treating injured crew members. 12 people had been hurt during the battle, but nobody died. That was a miracle considering how much damage the ship took. "How are they, Doc?" Jake asked. "They'll all recover," Henry replied. "Burns, broken bones, concussions, nothing life-threatening. Your ship protected them well, Captain." Jake moved on to the bridge where Commander Lisa Hayes was coordinating with the other human vessels. The tactical display showed all 12 ships in various states of repair. The Defiant looked the worst. Captain Monica Webb's frigate was missing large sections of armor and trailing debris. "Lisa, get me a secure channel to Admiral Grant," Jake said. "Already connected, sir. The Admiral wants to speak with all captains." Admiral Paul Grant's face appeared on the main screen. He looked tired, but satisfied. Behind him, Jake could see the busy command center of the Independence. "Good work today, everyone," Grant began. "We showed the galaxy what human engineering can do, but we also learned some lessons. Captain Webb, status of the Defiant?" Monica's face appeared in a smaller window. She had a bandage on her forehead and her uniform was torn. "We're hurt bad, Admiral. Lost 60% of our armor, main engines are at half power, and we're down to 20% ammunition. But we can still fight if needed." "Negative, Monica. The Defiant is ordered back to the Coalition repair station. Get your ship fixed properly. The rest of you assess damage and resupply. We've got a Coalition supply convoy arriving in 6 hours. They're bringing ammunition, armor plates, and replacement parts." Captain Greg Stevens spoke up from the Endeavor. "Admiral, have you seen the transmissions from the Coalition Command? They want to meet with you immediately." "I've seen them," Grant replied. "They have a lot of questions about our weapons and tactics. I'll be meeting with their high command in 2 hours. Jake, Greg, I want you both there. Bring your tactical officers too." "Understood, sir," Jake replied. 2 hours later, Jake found himself in a virtual conference room. The technology created a holographic space where people from different ships could meet as if they were in the same room. Admiral Grant stood at one end. Jake, Greg, and their officers stood nearby. Around them appeared the leaders of the Galactic Coalition. There were Velkari with their blue skin and musical voices, Trelkani who looked like living crystals, Horthak who resembled armored bears, Minden with their 3 eyes and tentacles. At least 20 different species filled the conference space. The Velkari ambassador, who had mocked the human fleet, now looked very different. His attitude was respectful, almost humble. "Admiral Grant, the Coalition owes humanity a great debt," the ambassador began. "Your fleet turned certain defeat into victory. We must apologize for our earlier behavior. We judged your ships by appearance rather than capability." "Apology accepted," Grant replied simply. "We've all learned something today." A Trelkani commander stepped forward. Her crystalline body reflected light in rainbow patterns. "We must understand your weapons. The kinetic accelerators, what you call rail guns. They penetrated Kruthak's defenses that have stopped every Coalition weapon. How is this possible?" Lieutenant Sarah Blake from the Independence answered. "The Kruthak's shields are designed to stop energy weapons. They absorb photons and disperse heat. But solid projectiles are different. They have mass and momentum. The shields cannot stop them." "But kinetic weapons are ancient technology," a Minden officer said. "We abandoned them centuries ago. Energy weapons are more efficient, more powerful, unlimited by ammunition supplies." Ben Cooper spoke up. He was nervous talking to so many important aliens, but he knew his subject well. "That's true, sir. Energy weapons have advantages, but they also have weaknesses. They can be absorbed by the right shields. They create heat signatures that are easy to detect. They draw power from ship reactors. Railguns don't have those problems." Admiral Grant added more context. "When humanity first went to space, we had limited power generation. We couldn't run big energy weapons, so we used railguns, magnetic accelerators that throw chunks of metal very fast. Simple physics. As we got better technology, everyone told us to switch to energy weapons. Some of our newer ships did. But we kept the old ships running, and we kept the railguns. Turns out that was a good decision." A Horthak general growled thoughtfully. "Your ships also took damage that would have destroyed our vessels. How thick is your armor?" Captain Greg Stevens answered this one. The Endeavour has hull armor 60 centimeters thick in most places. The Independence has armor over a meter thick in critical areas. We build our ships to take damage and keep fighting. Modern vessels rely on shields instead. When those shields fail, there's nothing left to protect them. But such thick armor makes ships slow and heavy, the Velkari ambassador protested. That's the trade-off, Jake said. Our ships are not as fast as yours. But speed doesn't matter much when you can survive hits that would destroy faster ships. The Defiant took enough damage to kill 3 Coalition vessels. She's still flying. The conference continued for another hour. The Coalition leaders asked detailed questions about human weapons, armor, tactics, and ship design. They were particularly interested in the redundant systems that let human ships keep working, even when badly damaged. Finally, the Trelkani commander asked the question that everyone was thinking. Would humanity be willing to share this technology? We could retrofit our ships with kinetic weapons, create hybrid vessels that use both energy and physical projectiles. Admiral Grant looked at the human officers around him before answering. We'd be willing to share, yes. But there's something you need to understand. The technology is only part of it. Our crews train differently. We teach people to fix things manually when computers fail. We practice damage control constantly. We build ships that can take punishment. That's not just technology, it's philosophy. Philosophy? The Minden officer asked, confused. The way we think about war and survival, Grant explained. Most races in the Coalition have had peace for generations. You build beautiful ships because you don't expect them to be hurt badly. You rely on technology to protect you. Humanity has never had that luxury. We've always been fighting someone. Earth itself made us tough. We build things to last because we know everything eventually breaks. We prepare for the worst because we've seen the worst many times. The conference room fell silent. The alien leaders thought about what Grant had said. It was a hard truth. The Coalition had grown comfortable with their superior technology. They had forgotten that war was ugly and brutal. The Velkari ambassador finally spoke. Admiral, we would like to request that human forces remain with the Coalition fleet, not as auxiliaries, but as full partners. Your tactical knowledge and combat experience would be valuable as we plan future operations against the Kruthax. We accept, Grant said, but we'll need supplies. Ammunition for our railguns, armor plates, replacement parts. Some of our ships need serious repairs. You'll have everything you need, the Trelkani commander promised. The Coalition production facilities will begin manufacturing railgun ammunition immediately. We'll also start designing hybrid weapon systems that combine our energy weapons with your kinetic technology. After the conference ended, Jake and his officers returned to the Valiant. Lisa was waiting on the bridge with good news. The supply convoy just arrived. They brought 10,000 tungsten rounds for our railguns, fresh armor plates, and enough spare parts to rebuild half the ship. Kate will be happy, Jake said. Tell her she's got her 48 hours after all. We're not going anywhere for at least 2 days. Over the next 2 days, the human fleet underwent repairs and resupply. Coalition engineers came aboard to study the human ships. They were amazed by the simple but effective designs. Everything was mechanical, with manual backups for electronic systems. The ships could be repaired with basic tools. No complex manufacturing equipment needed. Captain Monica Webb and the Defiant left for the major repair station. Her frigate needed major work that could not be done in the field. The remaining 11 human ships stayed with the main fleet. During this time, something unexpected happened. Coalition crews began visiting the human ships. They wanted to see the railguns up close. They asked questions about tactics and training. Young alien officers treated the old human vessels with respect now, not mockery. Ben Cooper found himself giving tours to Coalition weapons officers. He showed them how the railguns worked, how the targeting computers calculated trajectories, how the loading mechanisms handled the heavy ammunition. A young Velkari officer named Kayla was particularly interested. These systems are so simple, she said. But that's their strength, isn't it? Less to break down, less to go wrong. Exactly, Ben replied. My grandfather used to say that complicated things fail in conflict. The tactical briefing room on the Independence was crowded. Admiral Paul Grant stood at the center, looking at a holographic display of the Kruthax fleet. The numbers were not good. 80 enemy warships were gathering for a massive assault. The coalition had managed to assemble 60 ships to meet them, including the 11 human vessels. They're bringing everything they have, Grant said quietly. This won't be like last time. They know about our railguns now. They'll have new tactics. Captain Jake Morrison studied the enemy formation. The Kruthax ships were arranged differently. Heavy battleships formed a protective wall in front. Behind them were the smaller, faster cruisers and destroyers. They're using the big ships as shields, Jake observed. They'll absorb our railgun fire while the smaller ships flank us. That's my assessment too, Grant agreed. They've also spread their fleet out more, making it harder for us to concentrate fire. We'll need to adapt. Commander Lisa Hayes pointed to another part of the display. Admiral, look at this. Their command ships are staying far back now. They learned from last time when we took out their leadership. Captain Greg Stevens from the Endeavour spoke up. We hurt them badly in the first fight, but we used up a lot of ammunition doing it. Even with the resupply, we've only got enough rounds for one major battle. We need to make every shot count. The Velkari ambassador entered the briefing room. Behind him came the Trelkani commander and several other coalition leaders. The ambassador looked worried. Admiral Grant, our analysis shows the Kruthax have at least 30% more firepower than our combined fleet. Even with your railguns, this will be a very difficult battle. All battles are difficult, Grant replied. That's why we train. Captain Morrison, you and I have been working on something. Show them. Jake activated a different display. It showed human ships working together with coalition vessels in coordinated attack patterns. The first battle taught us that energy weapons and kinetic weapons work well together. Energy weapons strip shields, railguns punch through hulls, so we developed combined tactics. Coalition ships will work in teams with human vessels. Each team has specific roles and responsibilities. A Horthak general leaned forward. Explain these roles. Coalition ships are the hammer, Jake said. Your energy weapons are powerful, and you can fire them constantly. You pressure the enemy and keep their shields busy. Human ships are the nail. We wait for the right moment, then drive railgun rounds through weak points. Together, we're more effective than either of us alone. The briefing continued for another hour. They planned attack formations, fallback positions, and emergency procedures. The coalition officers were learning to think like human commanders. They were starting to understand that battles were not just about technology. They were about timing, coordination, and knowing when to take risks. 6 hours later, the combined fleet moved to intercept the Kruthax. Captain Jake Morrison sat in his command chair on the Valiant's bridge. The old ship had been fully repaired and resupplied. Fresh armor plates covered the damage from the previous battle. The railguns were loaded and ready. All stations report ready, Lisa announced. Good, Jake replied. Danny, take us into formation. Ben, keep those guns warm. We'll need them soon. Ensign Danny Price guided the Valiant into position alongside a Velkari cruiser named the Starlight. The two ships would work as a team during the battle. The Velkari captain, an officer named Torin, transmitted a message. Valiant, this is Captain Torin. We're honored to fight alongside you. Our energy weapons will clear a path. Your railguns will finish the job. Understood, Starlight, Jake replied. Stay close and watch for our target markers. When we paint a target, hit it with everything you have. Across the fleet, similar partnerships were forming. Human and coalition ships pairing up, learning to trust each other. Admiral Grant watched from the Independence, satisfied with how quickly the two forces were coming together. All ships, this is Grant. The Kruthax are approaching. Remember your training. Remember your partners. Fight smart, fight hard, and we'll all go home. Grant out. The Krethax fleet appeared on sensors. 80 ships in tight formation, moving steadily toward the coalition position. They came slowly this time, cautiously. They had learned respect for human weapons. The battle began at maximum range. Coalition ships opened fire first, their energy weapons reaching across space to test Krethax shields. The enemy returned fire immediately. Space lit up with weapons fire from both sides. Jake watched his tactical display carefully. The Krethax were keeping their heavy battleships forward, just as predicted. Those thick hulls could take railgun hits better than smaller ships. It was a good strategy, but not perfect. "Ben, see those battleships?" Jake said. "Don't shoot them yet. Target the escorts on the flanks, the destroyers and light cruisers. They don't have enough armor to survive our rounds." "Understood, Captain. Locking onto flank targets." The Valiant fired and the Starlight fired at the same target a second later. Energy beams from the Valkyrie ship hammered a Krethax destroyer's shields. 2 seconds later, a railgun round from the Valiant punched through the weakened shield and straight through the destroyer's hull. The enemy ship broke apart. "Good kill!" Ben shouted. "Reloading!" This pattern repeated across the battlefield. Coalition ships would pound targets with energy weapons while human ships waited for the perfect moment to fire. The Krethax tried to spread out, to avoid giving the combined fleet easy targets. But that meant their own formation became weaker. Captain Greg Stevens led 3 human ships in a flanking move. The Endeavor, along with 2 frigates, swung wide around the Krethax formation. They caught 5 enemy cruisers separated from the main fleet. "All ships concentrate fire," Greg ordered. "Take them down fast." The 3 human ships fired together. 15 railgun rounds crossed space in perfect coordination. The 5 Krethax cruisers tried to maneuver away, but they were not fast enough. Within 2 minutes, all 5 were destroyed or crippled. But the Krethax were not making the same mistakes as before. Their commander kept the main battleships together, creating a wall of heavy armor that was hard to crack. When human ships tried to get close enough for good shots, the Krethax concentrated fire on them. The Independence took heavy damage when it pushed too far forward. Multiple plasma cannons hit the old carrier, burning away armor and destroying external systems. Admiral Grant ordered a retreat before the damage became critical. "All human vessels, pull back to secondary positions," Grant transmitted. "Coalition ships, advance and pressure their center. Keep them busy." Lieutenant Sarah Blake worked frantically at her station, coordinating fleet movements and targeting data. The battle was more complex than the first one. Both sides were adapting constantly, trying to find advantages. "Admiral, I'm seeing something," Sarah said. "The Krethax battleships are staying close together. Very close. They're almost overlapping their shield coverage." Grant looked at the display. Sarah was right. The Krethax were so focused on protecting each other that their formation had become too tight. "That's an opportunity," Grant said. "If we can get a clear shot into the middle of that formation, the debris from one exploding ship will damage the others. Contact Captain Morrison. I have a job for him." Jake received his orders 5 minutes later. The Valiant was to make a high-speed run directly at the Krethax formation. Get close enough to fire railguns into the center of their battleship group. It was dangerous, possibly suicidal, but it might break the enemy formation wide open. "You heard the Admiral," Jake told his crew. "Danny, plot the fastest course to point-blank range. Ben, I want every railgun ready to fire the moment we're in position. Lisa, coordinate with the Starlight. We'll need cover." "Captain, they'll tear us apart," Lisa said quietly. "Maybe," Jake replied. "But if we break that formation, we win the battle. The Admiral is counting on us." The Valiant accelerated toward the Krethax fleet. Energy beams and plasma bolts filled space around them. Danny flew the old ship like a fighter, dodging and weaving through enemy fire. The Starlight followed close behind, its shields extended to cover the Valiant when possible. Twice, direct hits struck the Valiant's armor. The ship shook and groaned. Warning alarms blared. But the thick hull held. Kate Sullivan's voice came through from engineering. "Captain, we can't take much more of this. Hull integrity at 60%. "Just a little longer, Kate. Hold it together." The Valiant burst through the outer edge of the Kruthax formation. Now they were surrounded by enemy battleships on all sides. It was the most dangerous position possible, but it was also exactly where Jake needed to be. "Ben! Fire everything! All railguns, full salvo!" The Valiant fired every weapon at once. The ship's power system screamed under the load. 20 railgun rounds launched in 4 seconds, spreading out in multiple directions. Each round hit a different Kruthax battleship at near point-blank range. The result was catastrophic. 5 battleships took direct hits to critical systems. 2 exploded immediately. The others began to drift, powerless. Debris from the explosions slammed into nearby Kruthax ships, causing additional damage. The tight formation that had seemed so strong suddenly became a death trap. "Get us out of here," Jake ordered. "Danny, full power to engines." The Valiant turned hard and accelerated away. Behind them, the Kruthax formation was in chaos. Ships crashed into each other trying to avoid debris. The protective wall of battleships had a massive hole in it now. Admiral Grant saw the opportunity. "All ships, advance! Pour fire into that gap! Don't let them recover!" The Coalition fleet surged forward. Every ship fired into the broken Kruthax formation. Human railguns and Coalition energy weapons combined to create devastating destruction. The Kruthax tried to rally, but it was too late. Their formation was born 3 weeks after the second battle. Captain Jake Morrison stood in a massive space station orbiting a Coalition world. The station was huge, capable of holding thousands of people from dozens of species. Today it was hosting a ceremony to honor the human fleet and their victory over the Kruthax. Jake felt uncomfortable in his dress uniform. He was a fighter, not a diplomat. But Admiral Paul Grant had ordered all human captains to attend. So here he was, standing in a grand hall filled with alien dignitaries and military officers. Commander Lisa Hayes stood beside him, also in dress uniform. She whispered quietly, "I never thought we'd end up here. Remember when they were laughing at our ships?" "I remember," Jake replied. "Seems like a long time ago now?" The ceremony began with speeches from Coalition leaders. The Velkari ambassador spoke first, his musical voice carrying through the hall. 3 weeks ago, the Coalition faced destruction. The Kruthax Empire brought overwhelming force against us. We fought with courage, but we were losing. Then humanity arrived with ancient ships that we mocked and dismissed. Those ships and the brave crews that served on them saved us all. Today we honor them, and we apologize for our earlier judgment. Captain Monica Webb of the Defiant sat in the front row. Her frigate had been badly damaged in the first battle and missed the second one entirely. But she was here now, representing the human fleet alongside the other captains. Her ship was still in repair, but would fly again soon. Captain Greg Stevens received a medal from the Trelkani commander. His Endeavor had performed brilliantly in both battles, destroying more enemy ships than any other human vessel. Greg accepted the medal with a simple nod. He was not the type for fancy speeches. When it was Jake's turn, he walked up to receive his own medal. The Horthak general presenting it looked like an armored bear standing upright. His voice was a deep growl. "Captain Morrison, your attack run in the second battle broke the Kruthax formation and won the fight. You showed incredible bravery and skill. The Coalition is honored to have you as an ally." Jake took the medal and shook the general's massive paw. "Thank you, sir. But I was just doing my job. Every member of my crew deserves this medal as much as I do." After the ceremony ended, there was a reception. Jake found himself surrounded by Coalition officers asking questions about human tactics and training. A young Minden officer wanted to know how the Valiant survived so much damage. "Our ships are built tough. Jake explained. Thick armor, redundant systems, simple design. When something breaks, we can fix it with basic tools. Modern ships are more efficient, but they're fragile. One good hit, and they fall apart. But doesn't the weight of all that armor slow you down? The Minden asked. Sure, Jake agreed. We're not as fast as coalition ships, but in battle, survival matters more than speed. A slow ship that keeps fighting is better than a fast ship that gets destroyed. Across the room, Admiral Grant was speaking with the Coalition High Command. They were discussing future operations against the Krathax. The enemy was beaten, but not destroyed. They would need time to rebuild their fleet. That gave the Coalition time to prepare for the next phase of the war. We want to integrate your weapons technology into our fleet, the Trelkani commander said. Create hybrid ships that use both energy and kinetic weapons. Would humanity be willing to help with this project? We would, Grant replied, but it will take time. Railguns are simple in concept but complex in execution. You need strong power systems, precise targeting computers, and ammunition logistics. It's not just about mounting guns on your ships. We understand, the Velkari ambassador said. We're prepared to invest whatever resources are necessary. Your weapons gave us victory when we faced defeat. We must have that capability ourselves. The conversation continued for hours. Plans were made for joint training programs, technology sharing agreements, and combined fleet operations. The Coalition was learning that human knowledge and experience were just as valuable as human weapons. Lieutenant Ben Cooper found himself giving a technical presentation to a group of Coalition weapons officers. He showed them detailed plans of the Valiant's railgun systems, explaining how magnetic accelerators worked and how to calculate firing solutions. The key is understanding physics, Ben explained. Energy weapons are about power output and beam focus. Kinetic weapons are about mass and velocity. You multiply those together and you get momentum. Momentum is what breaks through armor and destroys targets. A Velkari engineer asked, but how do you aim projectiles that take seconds to reach their target? The enemy can move during that time. That's what the targeting computer does, Ben replied. It predicts where the enemy will be based on their current course and speed. Then it aims ahead of the target. It's called leading the shot. Human warships have been doing it for thousands of years, back when we fought on Earth's oceans with gunpowder cannons. The Coalition officers were fascinated. They had forgotten these old techniques because their energy weapons traveled at light speed and hit instantly. Learning to think about projectile trajectories and travel time was completely new to them. Lieutenant Sarah Blake was teaching a class on tactical coordination. She explained how the human fleet communicated during battle, how they shared targeting data, and how they maintained organization even when badly damaged. Modern communication systems are complex, Sarah said. They offer lots of features and capabilities. But they can be jammed or hacked. Human systems are simpler. Basic radio, laser communication, even visual signals. These methods are hard to disrupt. In battle, reliability is more important than fancy features. Over the following weeks, the story of humanity's ancient warships spread throughout Coalition space. News services covered it constantly. Artists created paintings and sculptures. Writers composed stories and songs. Children across dozens of worlds played games pretending to be human captains. But the real impact was in the military. Coalition shipyards began designing new vessels that incorporated human design philosophy. Thicker armor, redundant systems, manual backup controls. They also started manufacturing railguns and stockpiling ammunition. The first Coalition ship to mount railguns was a Velkari cruiser named the Dawn. Captain Torin, who had fought alongside the Valiant in the second battle, commanded it. He asked Jake Morrison to be present when they tested the new weapons. Jake stood on the Dawn's bridge, watching as Velkari crew members operated the railgun controls. The systems looked different from human designs, but the basic principles were the same. When Torin gave the order to fire, the railgun launched a tungsten round at a target drone 10,000 kilometers away. The round hit perfectly, destroying the drone in one shot. The Velkari crew cheered. Torin turned to Jake with a satisfied expression. "It works. Your technology combined with our ship design. This is the future of coalition warfare." "Just remember," Jake said, "the weapon is only part of it. Training your crew, maintaining your systems, and knowing when to shoot are just as important as the gun itself." "We're learning," Torin replied. "Slowly, but we're learning." Back on the Valiant, life returned to normal routines. The ship was fully repaired now, better than it had been in years. The Coalition had provided top-quality replacement parts and the best repair teams available. Kate Sullivan, the chief engineer, was very pleased with the results. "She's running better than ever, Captain," Kate reported. "New power conduits, upgraded sensors, fresh armor throughout. They even replaced some systems I thought we'd have to live with forever." "Good," Jake said, "because the Admiral wants us ready to deploy in 2 weeks. The Krithaks are rebuilding their fleet, and we need to be prepared." The crew of the Valiant prepared for their next mission with professional efficiency. They had proven themselves in 2 major battles. They had earned the respect of the Coalition. But they knew the war was not over. The Krithaks would return, stronger and more determined than before. Ensign Danny Price, who had been nervous and uncertain during the first battle, was now a confident helmsman. He had flown the Valiant through 2 fights and survived both. He practiced evasive maneuvers constantly, preparing for the next time enemy fire came at them. Admiral Paul Grant gathered his captains for a final briefing before deployment. All 11 ships were ready to go. The Defiant had been fully repaired, and Captain Monica Webb reported her frigate was combat-ready. "The Coalition is forming a new task force," Grant explained. 20 Coalition ships and our 11 vessels. We'll be operating in Krithak's territory, conducting raids and gathering intelligence. It's dangerous work, but it needs to be done." "Where's the Defiant assigned?" Monica asked. "You'll be with us," Grant replied. "Every ship is valuable now. The Coalition has learned not to waste resources or underestimate opponents." Jake Morrison thought about everything that had changed in the past month. When they arrived, the Coalition had laughed at their old ships. Now those same aliens were copying human designs and asking for advice. The ancient vessels that everyone dismissed had become the most feared weapons in the fleet. But Jake knew the real lesson was not about weapons or technology. It was about underestimating opponents. The Coalition had assumed their modern ships were superior to everything else. They had forgotten that experience, training, and determination could overcome technological advantages. The Krithaks had made the same mistake. They saw old ships and assumed easy victory. Instead, they found tough opponents who fought with weapons and tactics they could not counter. Both the Coalition and the Krithaks learned the same hard lesson. Never judge a warrior by the age of their weapons. Judge them by their skill, their courage, and their will to fight. The human fleet prepared to depart. 11 ancient warships, each one over a century old, each one maintained and upgraded by crews who loved them. They were not the newest ships in the galaxy. They were not the fastest or the most powerful. But they were reliable, tough, and deadly in the hands of skilled crews. Admiral Grant gave the order. "All ships prepare for hyperspace jump. Course set for the Krithak's border. We have work to do." The engines of the Independence hummed to life. Around it, 10 other human ships activated their hyperspace drives. Energy built up around each vessel, creating shimmering fields that would carry them across light years in minutes. Jake Morrison sat in his command chair on the Valiant, looking at his loyal crew. Lisa Hayes at her station, calm and professional. Ben Cooper at weapons, hands ready on the controls. Danny Price at the helm, confident and alert. Kate Sullivan in engineering, keeping the old ship running perfectly. "Ready, Captain," Lisa reported. "Then let's go show the galaxy what these ancient ships can do," Jake said with a slight smile. Engage hyperspace drive. The Valiant, along with the rest of the human fleet, jumped into hyperspace. They were heading toward danger, toward more battles and more challenges. But they were ready. They had proven themselves against overwhelming odds. They had turned mockery into respect and defeat into victory. The legend of humanity's ancient warships had spread across the galaxy. Now that legend continued, growing with each battle fought and each victory won. The old ships that everyone laughed at had become the ships that everyone feared. And in the end, that made all the difference. Oaken, their battleships destroyed or damaged, and their morale shattered. The Krathax commander gave the order to retreat. The surviving enemy ships turned and fled toward hyperspace. The Coalition fleet pursued them, destroying stragglers and ensuring none turned back. When it was over, 53 Krathax ships had been destroyed. The rest escaped, but they were broken and beaten. The Coalition had lost 12 ships, and nearly every surviving vessel was damaged. But they had won decisively. Jake Morrison slumped in his command chair, exhausted. The Valiant had taken severe damage during the attack run, but she was still flying, still fighting. Around him, his crew celebrated quietly, too tired for loud cheers. Admiral Grant's face appeared on the screen. "Outstanding work, Captain. That was either very brave or very crazy." "Probably both, sir," Jake replied with a tired smile. "Aided ways. Simple things either work or they don't. These railguns have been working for 200 years. Word of the battle spread quickly through Coalition space. News services across dozens of worlds reported the story. Ancient human warships had turned the tide against the Krathax. Ships that everyone had dismissed as obsolete had proven to be the deadliest weapons in the fleet. The story captured people's imagination. Artists created images of the old human ships fighting alongside sleek Coalition vessels. Writers composed songs about the battle. Children played games pretending to be human captains commanding ancient warships. But Jake Morrison did not pay much attention to any of that. He was focused on preparing for the next battle, because the Krathax would return. They had been humiliated, and they would want revenge. He was right to worry. 3 days after the first battle, Coalition scouts detected a new Krathax fleet gathering in a nearby system. This one was larger, much larger. Firing in sequence. All 6 enemy destroyers were destroyed in less than 3 minutes. The Krathax flagship, Vexthor's personal command ship, tried to rally the fleet, but Captain Monica Webb had her eyes on that target. The Defiant was badly damaged, trailing atmosphere and debris, but her guns still worked. "All remaining railguns, lock onto that flagship," Monica ordered. "Fire everything we have left." The Defiant's final salvo was perfect. 4 massive rounds hit the Krathax flagship in rapid succession. The first 2 shattered the bridge. The third and fourth penetrated deep into the engineering section. Massive explosions erupted inside the flagship. It listed to one side, dead in space. Without their commander, and with more than half their fleet destroyed or crippled, the remaining Krathax ships broke off. They turned and fled back toward hyperspace. The human and Coalition forces held their position and watched them go. Silence fell across the communication channels for a long moment. Then Admiral Grant spoke. "All ships, cease fire. Let them run. Status reports everyone." One by one, the human captains reported in. Every ship was damaged. Some were barely flying, but they were all still there. All 12 ancient vessels had survived their first battle with the Krathax. The Coalition fleet transmitted their own reports. They had lost 8 ships completely, and 15 more were heavily damaged. But they had won, and they knew who had made that victory possible. "Essels, this is Grant. Execute Protocol Achilles, weapons free. Show them what we brought to this fight." Jake felt a cold smile cross his face. "Ben, you heard the Admiral. Light them up." Ben Cooper's fingers moved across his console with practiced speed. Weapons online. Targeting systems active. Railguns ready to fire on your command, sir. The Coalition fleet was in trouble. They had lost 5 ships already and more were damaged. The Kruthax kept advancing, kept shooting, kept winning. Then the human ships opened fire and everything changed. The Valiant shook as its main guns fired. But there were no bright energy beams, no glowing plasma bolts. Instead, the railguns launched solid metal projectiles at incredible speed. Tungsten rounds, each one weighing several tons, flew across space faster than missiles. The Kruthax never saw them coming.